All right. Hey guys, thanks so much for joining me today. So I am joined by Tim Friedlander and Carson Beck with West Coast Demos. So let's jump in, guys.
Okay.
First, thanks for joining us. What do you think the role of a demo is in 2024? Is it still marketing? Is it to secure an agent? Is it something else?
I'll jump in with that one, and then Carson, you can have your thoughts on this one. I think it's whatever is needed by the talent at that point in their career
Okay.
is what it is. And it can be all these things. It can be marketing, it can be to secure an agent, it can be to move agencies, it can be for a specific production company that you're working with that you're trying to pitch if you add the marketing into it. It could be for a specific genre that you're trying to really break into or a company you want to work for. That's kind of what we look at it. And part of this, I think, is really, at least for us, is letting the talent guide us on what the role of this demo needs to be for them at that point in their career.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, all the things that you noted are the same thing. It's all marketing, and within that umbrella of marketing, it's different ways of doing lead generation. Basically, whether you're expanding your team to help you do that lead generation, or you're pursuing it yourself, a demo is a shortcut to getting somebody to acquaint themselves with what you do and who you are, so you don't have to audition for every single thing. So, in some way or another, you're always selling yourself with this thing, and that's why it's so important that it's in touch with the world at large as well as your skills. So I think it's all of those things.
I like that it represents you and where you're
Yep,
at, what you
absolutely.
can,
Hmm.
what you can do
And
for
where
the
you want to be.
And where you want to be. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So, how long has West Coast Demos been making demos?
We started in 2017, 2018, late
Yeah,
2017.
things were pretty janky upstart in 2017. We started taking it
Yeah.
more seriously in 2018. We really were just doing production for our friends because we had
Okay.
studio experience, and then we're like, okay, well, we actually have a point of view on this. And I think by 2018 we were much more serious with it.
Yeah.
Streamline the processes. Okay, great.
Yep. Yeah.
What genres of demos do you produce?
Carson, want to grab that one?
Commercial, primarily interactive animation. We used to do some more niche stuff like radio imaging.
Yeah.
That's not as much of our focus anymore because neither one of us is super active in that space.
Yeah.
I think it's important that the producer, at least in our point of view, have some professional involvement with the genre that they're lending expertise on. Tim and myself are both commercial voice actors. Our studios record video games and animation stuff on the regular. So that's kind of what we end up, not only what gets brought to us the most, but what we end up kind of pitching ourselves for the most. We've done some promo demos and other, hyper specific stuff, some narration, a very occasional amount of e-learning. We tend to rise to the occasion of when somebody comes to us and says they need something. If it's something we're confident in doing, we'll do it. We haven't turned away a lot of demos, but if we have a colleague who's definitely better geared for
Absolutely.
a certain niche genre, then we will certainly send that business their way.
I think that's excellent. I think that it just shows also kind of you said point of view, but also supporting other communities, your colleagues. I think that's great. Well, so with that, our next question actually is, do you think it's important for producers to niche down the types of demos? Because we have seen producers who are like, we do all of them. But like you pointed out, when you work in an actual genre, whether you're casting, directing, or voicing, you have a little more current insight. But is it also, if you can do it, do it? What do you
Right.
think, Tim?
That's a tough question. I mean, I'll answer it. I think, a lot of the choices that Carson and I make, we make based on our opinions about our careers and our experience and what we can do. And for us, we've chosen to be this kind of niche. But we also are not full-time demo producers.
Fair point.
So somebody who is a full-time demo producer would, if they are being a full-time demo producer, is staying up on the trends. They're studying the industry. They are making sure that they are aware of that. So our choice to for these things is based on our particular approach to the industry. But to say that others should do that is not something that I think is something that I would say. I think people should play to their strengths, and maybe some people can do everything and some people can't. So if you can't do it all, don't do it all. But for us, this was our business choice from our perspective. I don't know, Carson, if you want to add to that.
Well, I'm going to try not to answer too many questions like this, but
Yeah.
for a large part, it does depend on who the talent is and where they're at and what they need.
Okay.
I think it's a good idea for the person producing the demo to have some sort of engagement, whether you've been an engineer for commercials or you're casting or whatever, to have some professional experience, I think helps. But at the end of the day, if somebody's approached you and says, I know what I'm doing, I know what I want, I know what I need, and what they need from you is the resources that a demo producer provides, it may not be as critical that that producer have specific, on the job experience. Most of my sessions are commercial VO, so I'm very at home directing commercial reads. But at the end of the day, if somebody walks in and says, look, I know what my reads are, I need you because I need somebody to engineer,
Right.
provide a booth space,
Yeah.
kind of be a external objective point of view and just make sure I'm not completely screwing this up. Like we do that plenty of times as well. So it depends.
Okay. Okay. Now, what criteria, if any, must a talent have met before you'll agree to do their demo? And do you also require a studio test if they're not in your studio?
We'll go backwards. We do require a studio test if they're not in studio. And we not frequent. I would say most of the time people pass, but this in the last probably 6 months we have sent 2 or 3 talent to an outside studio because we knew that the audio quality wouldn't be up to par for what we want. For what the talent is going to need in order to be competitive in that area. Do you want to take the other one, Carson? The criteria, or do you want to answer that too?
Yeah, I mean that's an important bit of feedback we make sure to highlight. If a talent is being sent to an outside studio, I mean purely on the demo basis, that's a quality assurance thing for us. If there's excessive background noise, or I mean sometimes it's stuff that they're aware of is an issue. They're like, hey, normally my booth is fine, but I'm in transit or some weird thing is happening that their booth isn't available, and they know that. But sometimes it's like, hey, maybe you thought you had a broadcast ready home studio and it turns out this is not up to snuff. And selfishly, I don't want to spend all day fixing audio things in your demo. I'd rather just like get it sounding good and get it out the door. But the first part of the question was, we do tend to be pretty strict about who we take on because we're not full time with it. We really want to be working with people who are at a certain stage in their career and are working at a certain level, ideally already, or show a certain amount of prowess in the area that they're pursuing. And it really is a case by case basis where we start every process with the consultation where we'll, be pretty upfront about that and have them read some copy and hear about where they're at in their career, what their personality is, how they're approaching this business. Because, we don't want to outright say no to anybody who's brand new to the business. If that had been my demo producer's point of view back in the day, I probably wouldn't have gotten into the business because I was brand new. But when you're approaching it with enough stick-to-itiveness and have the motivation and in some cases the inherent ability to interpret copy in a certain way, it takes a lot less work to get somebody to that place where they're competitive. And some people just sort of have that or have done a certain amount of groundwork already, in which case we'll put them on the reads and say, okay, are you able to take direction? Great, you have a sound, but is that your only sound? Because we're not going to make a full demo if you just have one read, right? So we'll typically do that whole first consultation meeting, and then Tim and I will chat and be, frank with each other about whether or not we're going to enjoy the process of working with them, because it is collaborative for us.
For sure, and we'll get to that. I do want to touch base on the collaboration part.
Sure.
Do you guys also coach? And if so, do you require coaching as part of your demo process?
We don't coach per se, as like we're not out there being coaches. We help our friends if they need help with coaching. We'll definitely coach our friends. Every once in a while, we have people we coach each other back and forth. We'll get on a read and do stuff like that. We have sent people back for coaching, for sure. We have said, this is what you want to do. You're not quite there, but you could be if you had come back to us in 3 months or come back to us in 6 months after you've worked with these couple of people, and we give some recommendations depending on what genre they're working in on there. We only require it if it's needed and if somebody's not ready for it. So, but we don't personally coach and don't require it from us. We don't require it from us. So.
I'm so Tim knows this. I'm so deathly afraid of coaching or being perceived as a coach.
Right.
I'm just not interested in doing it. And I
Yeah.
think directing is, in the demo process, you can ride the line between coaching
Exactly.
and directing.
Yeah.
Because there aren't a ton of stakes. You have time to work on these things. And Tim and I like to get carried away and get in the nitty gritty of working on stuff, but we'll highlight for people, especially in that first consultation. If we have them do a read and we do a redirect and then we do a redirect and we're not hearing what we need to, I'll try to lay out and say, hey, we were looking for this. We didn't quite get there on this. It feels like the connective tissue between what you think the read should be and what is actually coming out of your mouth maybe isn't there, and that's okay. So then in that case, we'll make the suggestion to go and coach with somebody and just say, hey, we're here when you're ready. We'll do another assessment and make sure that when we get, because we would get into the recording process, I don't want to be spending 4 hours directing a read. That's not a good use of
Or
anybody's
doing
time.
line reads.
And
Yeah,
Nope.
trying to.
Nope.
Yeah, we definitely don't like to lean on line reads because this is really about what the talent's bringing to the table, and eventually down the line that they are in a good place to be able to show up in the actual session or on the actual audition and sound like they did in the demo.
Yeah,
Yep.
and self-direct,
Exactly.
all the things. Okay, excellent.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of a little bit convoluted, but
Yep.
we have found too that there are a lot, sorry, I have a bug, that there are a lot of coaches who are demo producers, and there's producers who, there's just a lot of overlap. And do you feel like there's something to be said for having like a separation of church and state? Like demo producers should produce demos, coaches should just coach, producers should just, like, do you think everything should be separated? Is it okay that there's a lot of overlap? Because it feels like there might be a conflict of interest. That's really where the point of
that's a
that
good question.
comes.
I have my thoughts on this, and this is actually Carson. I don't think I've ever we've ever discussed this, so I'll give you my thoughts, and Carson, you can feel free to disagree on this or however you want to add this.
I'm excited to hear.
Exactly. I don't think that I don't think there should be a required separation of church and state. That like if you do this, you shouldn't do that. I think some of the value in a lot of these coaches or a lot of these casting or whatever you're doing is the fact that they see so much of the industry. That a casting director does know what's happening with a producer and then can take that into a coach and turn this into a demo. I think what I'm not a big fan of is those who require the demo to come along with the coaching package, or it becomes a quid pro quo where you're like, great, I will cast you, but I also need you to, I almost am going to require that you do your demo with me. That's where I think you get into a conflict of interest if one comes with a requirement of being the other. But I think there is so much value in working with somebody who has seen so much of the industry as a whole that you can see it. I think what you get with separation of church and state is that you get a little silo that one person only knows what's happening in one area, and they don't actually see what, if you're a casting director and doing production and doing demos, you know what casting currently needs right now, even before it goes to, you might be a year ahead on a casting idea, and you can give this to somebody in a thing. So I don't think there should be required, but I think that it should be very careful that they don't become a conflict of interest, so that one is required in order to do the other.
Yeah. What about you, Carson?
Yeah, I largely agree with that. I don't think there's inherently anything unethical about those boundaries crossing. And in general, I'm not really a fan of having these hard, fast rules that you should only do one thing. But that said, there are unethical ways to do those things at the same time. And I mean, from the talent perspective, if you're doing your first demo or your third demo, what's more appealing to you? Somebody who only makes demos, who's going to, you're a production note on the day, or somebody who is out there casting spots? I mean, you feel like you're really getting insight, right? People have come to us and been excited about the fact that we run studios, we see sessions, we're in sessions, and that's part of our value proposition to our clients, really, is that we're sharing our point of view. And if our point of view is something you want, great. But if I was only producing demos, I mean, like Tim said, I don't want to be stuck in that silo. I don't feel like I would ever see enough of the rest of the industry to be able to give my thoughts and perspectives, because it changes so fast right now.
Absolutely.
If you're not seeing the copy that's coming out the door every day, if you're not reading on stuff yourself or engineering on stuff or participating in casting in some way, you're just not seeing below the hood of the industry in a way that somebody who's just cranking demos out might not see. in the same
Well,
way.
and I think all three of us can relate as we are all creatives, whether it's also music, voiceover, right, so many places. I can't imagine being siloed into anything, but I think it's an
Of
important
course.
question to ask, because
Yeah.
So,
We're
okay,
enterprising folk.
say it again.
We're enterprising folk.
Exactly.
Yep,
I
yep, yep.
know. Coming up with the next thing. Um, how much do you charge for a demo and what is included in this cost?
All right. I have this conversation frequently. I will
Not
answer some.
enough.
Yeah, not enough. Yeah, this goes to kind of what we said earlier and what will come around when we talk about production process. We're $3,000 a demo.
Okay.
And that includes everything from the initial consult to the final mix and master, including any coaching sessions that have to happen in between if we need to have multiple discussions. Now, I said we don't coach. If it happens to have any prep sessions in between where we have to go through and fix copy, maybe we get on, so we'll do the initial consult. And then if we have to fix copy, if it takes us 3 or 4 of those sessions, we'll do that if we need to. We get to rewrite copy through the recording session. Includes a 2-hour recording session and includes another pickup session if needed, because we're not going to charge extra if we don't get what we need. And maybe we spend a lot of time working on a particular spot because we really want to get it right. We'll come back for that. It includes all of the production, which Carson does, which, and I know this is probably not something that's going to get brought up from other people. Maybe it has. But ensuring that all the music and sound effects are licensed and cleared that you use. Because especially with people putting their demos on YouTube, if you get a DCMA or a DRM caught in that, if I've heard multiple demos where somebody just pulled a pop tune or something like that and put it behind that, you're going to get that talent is going to get flagged and have their demo pulled on there.
Yeah.
And then into the mix, we include 2 revisions in there, and so if it's a small one, a third. Usually if we get beyond that, then we'll charge an hourly for the fix, and then that includes delivery, which is for us is a WAV file, an MP3 file of the spot, and then all the individual spots as well, and that's included in our process. Now, the part that I think makes us unique, and this is what I said earlier, is that as of 2 years ago or so, we work with one talent at a time.
Okay.
So we'll work from start to finish with a talent in the prep, and through their production, so that we can focus on that one talent, and then once we're done with that talent, we'll move on to somebody else. So we're not stacking up multiple talent where we're doing multiple week, multiple sessions in a week, or trying to go through those edits. We'll focus on that one person that we're working with, because I think, and Carson can say this too, is like that process to me is a relationship and is something that we can go on that journey with somebody from start to finish. And I like to be able to focus. I know that I'm working, maybe, so I like to compartmentalize my fear and trauma into one place. No, like compartmentalize. I like to know that our demo for like these next 4, 5, 6 weeks is going to be this one person, and we can think about that, and we can think about their scripts, and we can think about what we want to do with production and how we want to get them in. And because of that, we do, for West Coast demos, we'll do 5 or 6 demos in a year, sometimes less than that, because we want to have that much focus on each. I don't know.
Well, and it makes the talent feel special. And that's one of the things that I've heard, and it kind of reminded me that it is such a relationship. I mean, it can be transactional. Like if that's all you need, like Carson mentioned earlier, if I come to the table and I'm like, I just need you to master this, just make it sound pretty. And, it can be transactional, but the relationship side, what makes it fun is when I'm actively a part, the talent's a part, I know you're paying attention to me. I want to share that demo. Like I'm so excited about the process and feeling special that really gives momentum once it's done, gives ownership to the talent, and gets them excited. So,
and I think, Carson and I both come from the talent side, so we know how big of a deal it is to be able to save up that $1,500 or $2,000 or $3,000 to be able to do that demo, and that's a big deal. I know my last demo I did in 2016 or so, it took me almost a year to save up for that demo. So I wanted that specialness of having not being rushed out of the studio, of getting what I needed. So I think, if we were compartmentalized, if we were siloed and just, didn't have that other experience, I think that our perspective would be different on there.
Carson, you have anything to add?
There's a lot of trust involved too. Yeah, I was just going to say there's a lot of trust involved too. It's a big thing. You know, I'm very particular about how I do things, and we've worked with a lot of people that are very particular, and we want to honor that. It's a big deal to reach a point where you're truly ready to make a demo, and you're going to come out the other side of it with something that's going to set you up to get a lot of business, to grow your career, to, you know, reach that six-figure mark, whatever you're trying to do. The demo can get you there, and it's just a tool in the arsenal, and it's, you know, it's such a big deal because it's not as simple as just like getting on Squarespace and putting your VO site together, or, you know, programming your first email signature or whatever. Like it is a full embodiment, or at least it should be, of not only who you are now, but who you want to be in this professional space. So, you know, we take that very seriously, and it can be emotional. It can be, a lot of growth can happen in a very short amount of time, which can be frustrating or a struggle. But for the most part, all that dramatic statement aside, it's been a mostly smooth process with almost everybody we work with. And I think that's because we set up these benchmarks and these stakes along the way to check in. And that's why it's valuable to be with one client at one time, is because you have a moment to stop and say, okay, we've done this so far. Are we happy with where we're at? How are we feeling? You know, we'll make a case for when we think something is really working, and we'll maybe have to duke it out a bit on what the right call is, because, you know, even if somebody's brand new to the business, their point of view counts on this stuff. It really does, and may highlight stuff to us that we wouldn't thought of. I mean, we love doing weird stuff that's out of the box and unconventional whenever we can and when it makes sense to. But yeah, that's all.
Okay. So my next question, which you've touched on, but it's I will say it's controversial, but it really goes both ways. How important are custom scripts versus reworking existing copy, making sure it's on brand, or using taglines? Like what's your take on the big script topic?
Carson, you want to take
I can take this.
Yeah, go for
All
it.
right.
I mean,
Yeah.
we both have
So
thoughts on this too. Yeah.
yeah, I think, first of all, for West Coast demos, every demo we do, scripts are written from scratch, and
Okay.
they're based on real campaigns. We try to represent the brands themselves. I mean, to me, speaking mostly about commercials, in this case, that like on the demo, there's a certain element about connecting the personality of the talent to the personality of the brand. Right? Because those commercials are developing relationships. It's about creating a relationship between the brand and the consumer, and so that's why it's so important that like the authenticity that you bring to the spot is critical. And if you're taking a spot that already exists and note for note reproducing it, now the talent may be perfectly in a good spot to be a really compelling read for that. Now there's like a more logistical answer to the question, which is that if the script already exists, the spot's already out there, somebody could potentially hear that and go, oh, well, this isn't Ving Rhames or whoever reads the original spot. There's some of that. That's not as important to me as it is just, it's nice in the process to have a chance to work over the words. And, you know, we write everything from scratch because then we can use a line or two here and there, or use the tagline from the brand so that when you hear the spot, you're like, oh yeah, that sounds like Capital One.
Yeah.
But you're not going to go on to iSpot and hear Jennifer Garner reading the same copy, and then there's a comparative nature to it. So I think it's pretty important, but at the end of the day, the thing that is above all else is the talent's read on it. And if I haven't heard the spot before, if I don't know any better, and I'm just listening to the person's read, if the read is good, great. But, you know, call a spade a spade.
How about you, Tim?
No, I agree with that. You know, we tend to look at, you know, we'll take what's existing out there and make sure that we're honoring that brand if that's something that people want to do, and also make sure that we're honoring the current version of that brand. Right. You know,
Right.
And unfortunately, you know, this is one of those things that you run into commercial is that campaigns change over time, obviously. So you have, you know, for example, Capital One has a different, may have had a different slogan however many years ago, or you're going to do a Pepsi and their slogan has changed, or they have a new campaign that's running. So, you know, trying to be as current with that.
But then also having longevity, like that, where you don't have to redo the whole demo. Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, but but also I think that I think people are savvy enough also to know on the other end that they're not getting, that they're going to hear something. You might hear a campaign that's 2 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and a producer's not going to go, oh, well, that campaign is 2 years old, I'm not going to hire this talent.
Yeah, they're
right.
out.
But you know, but if you put out a brand new demo that has a tagline from 4 years ago or 5 years ago because you're not aware of what's current on there, that's important as well. And and I don't, we try and pick brands that fit with the personality of the talent that are current, that are maybe sometimes that are different, and we pick up something that is unique and is a brand that maybe is kind of small and niche but really fits in with the style of this person. But I don't, everything we do is custom written for that talent, being influenced by whatever is contemporary and currently on the market right now, so that you could listen to that and go, oh, that sounds like it fits into this, it could fit into this campaign.
I have a question that's not on the list, and I think you guys would be the perfect guys to answer this. When you're writing scripts, when you're producing demos, are you coming at it, generally speaking, from a national ad space? Do you ever do, like, for someone who maybe has a very thick Southern accent, or do you ever find that you're doing more, I'm calling it a regional demo? I just thought of that. Is that something you've ever thought about?
Yeah, go for it.
I have, at least.
Oh, okay.
We tend to target national stuff, and it's very, very seldom that the talent has a request either way. I've done some production just as like as a mixer and a mastering guy. I've done some production for demos with other producers that are more regionally aimed.
Okay.
To me, overall, like I feel like from a producer's point of view, if I listen to a demo, it doesn't detract from the person's talent if I hear a national spot, but I'm casting for a regional thing, and that's not totally my perspective. Like it doesn't matter too much to me. We'll kind of reach for whatever brand that we can find and learn enough about. We tend to do a lot of bigger brands because there's a sort of prestige, I think, to having a really strong presentation of a brand that everybody knows.
Okay.
If you really nail a Microsoft spot or a Taco Bell spot, obviously there have been other voices of Taco Bell, but like we tend to shoot for national spots because, we want to shoot for the top. And I feel like agents like to hear that as well. I feel like agents, want to hear national spots. They want to hear the voice represented on the largest scale that they can, achieving at the highest level that they can, which is the broadest reach, which is a national or international campaign.
Okay. Yeah, it just came to me, and I was like, a regional demo. Okay. Are you open? I know the answer to this, but are you open to collaborating with talent? You've touched on it, but let's just drive it home.
I think more than open, I think it's a requirement.
Okay.
I think in anything that we do requires that collaboration. Otherwise it just becomes, it's just like Carson and I talking to ourselves, and we already know like what we like.
I don't want to tell you who you are.
No.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Good luck with that, Carson. Go ahead and try. I'm kidding. No. Okay. So excellent. So you're open to collaborating. Okay. And then you did touch on this. I just want to make sure I'm checking all the boxes here. That if someone came with dry audio or their own script, like you would be willing to just do the engineering side if I came and just have you put beds and master it.
So let's talk. This is where we separate soundbox studios from West Coast demos.
Okay.
So West Coast demos is our fully top to bottom thing that we do, that if you want to hire West Coast demos, the process is going to be what we talked about.
Gotcha. Okay.
On that. If you need production, we are a production studio, so you can hire us to do production on this as a production studio. But that wouldn't be under the West Coast Demos brand. That would be under Soundbox, and that would be great. We're a producer, and it would say, engineered by Carson Beck at Soundbox Woodland Hills.
Thank you for making that distinguish. Yes, thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for. Perfect. Last two questions. In the time you've been producing demos, have you seen some shifts in the standard of what a demo needs to be? We talk about the custom scripts. We've talked, I know a lot of people will comment on overproduced or not talent forward. Are you seeing any shifts? Yeah, just kind of in what the expectation is. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I'll let Carson take this, because Carson literally handles the nitty-gritty of the actual production on this stuff. So I'll let you handle this, and then I'll add my thoughts if there's anything to add. So.
I mean, on a technical level, it's the Wild West. It seems to me that every producer just wants to get them loud and proud and not completely bury the voice.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. I've heard everything from, mostly dry with like very minimal production down below, which is not my favorite, to way overproduced with zip bang boom all over the voice, and it kind of distracts from the fact that maybe the talent isn't as good as they should be. Now, that's not universally the case, but I think it has always been important and always will be important to me that the spots that are on the demo sound like they could have come off the TV or radio and believably come from broadcast, which means the music can't be buried in the background, because in the bigger context of a commercial campaign, voiceover is not everything. The music tells the story as much as the voiceover does. So you can't tuck it down or make it mono or
There has to
now
be a
that
balance.
said,
Yeah.
yes. Now, that said, from the once removed perspective of the agents who are not our clients, but we talk to the agents about what they look for and what they like and what they're not liking. And it seems like as long as the production is not overpowering the talent, all they're listening for is the read. All they want to be able to hear is the authenticity of the read. I am a big believer that production can elevate the perceived status of the talent, if you will. If you have a talent that like has a killer read, but the demo sounds a little bit muffled and the production isn't that great and the music sounds dated, it'll drag your read right down
Yeah.
with it. If the music is not current and happening and representing the brand now, it'll make your read feel older. So that relationship, I spent probably most of the time, other than cleaning up mouth clicks, most of the time is spent on picking music,
Yeah.
and picking the right music for the spot and for the read, and finding cool moments for the music to interact with the read and not just be like a flat, static bed underneath it.
And
All of that
and
stuff
and
just like keeps the ear interested.
yeah, and the right music for the brand. You can't pick off brand. It
Yes.
might go with the talent, but the music and the sound effects have to go with the brand. You can't pick something that's so jarring and different from what you would normally hear with that brand.
That is so on
Sure.
point. That is a really great point. And that's what I've heard throughout and in talking to agents and casting directors is that exact thing where it's like you don't get to just make up the spot to just make it up. Like, like
Right.
you really
Mhm.
have to be thoughtful
Yeah.
about what you're doing and so that it's not distracting like you said. So,
Yeah.
last
Well, it gets back to
question.
that
Go ahead.
relationship between the brand and the consumer, and we're creating a microcosm of that,
Right.
where that music becomes a part of the storytelling. Where if the music
Yeah.
isn't right, you haven't done your job to tell that story, to connect that point, to make that land. So
Well, and you want, again, I'm feeding the narrative, all things you
Yeah.
want people to keep listening. Like that's the other
Yeah.
part.
yeah,
You don't
Absolutely.
want it to just be the first spot and then hitting stop. Like it
Yeah.
needs to be
mhm.
compelling and anyway, all things you know. So the last question for you guys, I know this has flown by for me, but it's been so informative. Why should a talent choose to work with you?
I will answer the question. They shouldn't. That's the
Okay.
first thing that I say. Um,
Okay.
They shouldn't. If they have spent, we almost always send people out to listen to other producers, to other
Okay.
demos. We tell them the process. We have this discussion, and we say go out and listen to other producers, get prices, learn their process, and if you still would like to work with us, come back to us and we can have a discussion about working together. But my first thing, almost always what we say is this is our process and you probably shouldn't work. Well, I don't say it that way, but you shouldn't. We're not the right place for everybody. We're very specific in who we want to work with. If you want a demo, if you're like, I have to have a demo in 2 weeks, we're not the right place for you. If
Yeah.
you want to say, I want to do this fully remote and I have a bad home studio, we're not the right place for you. If you want, and so part of that is our criteria for that. And yes, it's a joke that you shouldn't work with us, but that's on us making sure that we're able to provide what the talent need. We're not charging them too much, and they're going to get something that's not going to be up to par. I mean, that's not going to be something they can recreate. I think one of the things, and we actually didn't really miss, we was slightly touched on earlier, but these overproduced demos that a talent can't recreate when
Oh
they
yeah.
go out. This is one of the things that we saw for years.
Oh yeah.
We first got into this, this demo that is produced, we get great. We've got 37 takes and I'm going to edit down those 37 takes into a spot, but that talent can't go into the studio and say, hey, can you recreate that Chevy spot? And they'll say, well, I don't know because I didn't actually, that's not the spot that I created.
Right. That's right.
So, but they should work with us if what we offer is exactly what they need. And if they can find if they can find that from somewhere else, we recommend they go and work with somebody else. I mean, I don't know. Is that is that just
Carson,
And
what
I
do you
will
say?
say-
Are you turning everyone away too?
Well, yeah, I mean, Tim and I are a united front there.
I know.
The only thing I was going to say was that while we want to make sure the demo represents what the talent does, we also are aware of the fact that production, our directing, the script writing will bring a talent up a notch. At least it should. I don't know what they're paying for if it doesn't.
Yeah.
And that it's, we say this at the end of the process, that it's their responsibility to sit down with the demo and listen to it intently and understand why we ended up where we did. That's the finish line goalpost. That's the debrief. The thing you have to do to be ready for those things is, I mean, yeah, it's great to be involved in the process and read the spots and then let go and go, oh yeah, it sounds great. But you have to sit down and study and say, why did we pick the takes that we did? How did I get there? Play your demo and then read the script yourself and play them back together and sit, like, do the research to understand what you're entering into the marketplace with, because it's very likely that at least one or two, maybe more spots on that demo will become a calling card for your read. I mean, I have like a dumb little fake commercial that I made for a whiskey brand that doesn't even advertise, but I made it myself when I was first getting started, and I still get requested off of that spot. So being able to know what it is that people are hearing from that thing and be able to deliver with it on any other script, that's your responsibility as a talent, to run with the tool that we gave you and understand how it's going to serve you. That's your responsibility.
Yeah.
Now it's our job to make you sound as good as we can within reason, within, to make it realistic, but you also got to show up with the goods too. We're hands off at a certain point. So
and I think
there's a give and take there.
I think it's a great point you make too, is that the demo process doesn't end when you get your demo.
Yeah.
Right. That you need to know that demo, exactly as Carson said, that some people get that and they're like, great, I'm done. Oh, I haven't listened to it in years. You need to know that demo. You have to be able, because somebody will inevitably say, oh yeah, great, we brought you in because we like spot number 4 on your demo. And you got to know exactly what spot number 4 is. You got to know how you got there. You have to remember what the emotional, whatever it was that got you into that spot. So, keep that demo, and also to look back on that and go, you know what, man, I am so much better now than I was, because I know what I could have done to make that part better. But you have to be intimately familiar and acquainted with your demo. One of the things that I heard for years when people would come in, they were like, oh yeah, I've never, like in workout groups, they're like, I haven't listened to my demo in such a long time, because I didn't want to listen to it, because that demo, and part of it is because it's so overproduced and so edited together, but that it's not representative of them.
Yeah.
And you feel awkward listening to something that is not you and that you can't recreate.
And I think it's hard to, sorry, adding on, because you guys are so good to talk to.
Yes.
I think there's also
Please.
a little bit of shame. I'm going to use the word shame. That's a big word.
Okay.
I spent all this money and maybe I'm not happy with the thing, or maybe, and then people don't want to admit it. And then it's like, God, I got to fork out another $1,500, $2,000, $3,000 to do it again. It's like, I'd rather just ignore the mess that you know what I mean? So I'm
for
sure.
sure. Yeah. I mean, that's I think is one of the saddest things is to come out with a demo that's not usable.
Yeah.
And either, I mean, it's on multiple parties in that case. It's a demo producer shouldn't have done it, or the talent should have accepted that maybe it wasn't the right time, or maybe they were told it wasn't the right time, but they were like, well, I have the money, I got to do it now. So and so told me, it's a tough thing, and it is, we've seen this in both ways. There is like definitely demo paralysis. People who are just like, well, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. Let me just do like, if I have six more months of coaching, then I'll be okay. Well, I'm some close, but I'm not quite ready. I'm not quite ready. So at some point you have to do it, but you have to do it at a point that doesn't do it before it's too early, or in a predatory manner, or where you get taken advantage of.
Of course.
But you also can't wait too long to do it, because then you're never really going to jump into it. And your demo, like, I think regardless of where you are in your career, maybe not so much like, somebody like Joe Cipriano, but most everybody, you're going to do a demo and you're going to get done with it, and you're going to, like, 6 months later, you're going to go, oh yeah, I could have done that spot better. Oh,
I know.
like, oh man, had I just known. So no matter what you do,
That's a good thing, though, to a certain extent.
Thing. Yeah, you're getting better. You're like, oh yeah, yeah. Or you listen to it and you go, oh yeah, that choice was the director's choice, not mine. Or whatever it might have been, being able to recognize those things. But I think, I mean, it's just, I always feel bad when somebody gets a demo that they can't use, or that isn't representative of them, or that they're really proud of, and they give it to something, you listen to it and you're like, this isn't you.
not
I
it.
don't know what this is. This isn't you. And that's for multiple reasons. Maybe they didn't know themselves well enough at the time they did the recording to really know who they authentically were, or they've changed and they've grown. I mean, whatever. Multiple. We can go down this rabbit hole.
I know.
Forever on that one.
I know. Well, I don't want to
so-
keep you guys any longer than
No,
I
no
have
problem.
to, but it has been incredible talking to you. And I appreciate you just being so open and transparent about your process. And once this is all said and done, hopefully we'll get everything posted in a nice little happy place. And
Cool.
then hopefully people will not come to you, because that's our takeaway.
Exactly.
Don't do it.
Demos with you.
Leave us alone.
No, but we are more than happy to give you the names of 10 different demo producers who we think will be phenomenal for you.
There you go. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Awesome. Go. Thanks, Jen.